Good evening, everyone. I'm Robert Smythe, Executive Director of the Hippogriff's History Channel here in London, England. Here I am in front of the replica of the 1607 Godspeed that took the original 104 settlers from Great Britain to North America, thus creating the prelude to the United States of America. In this series of documentaries about antebellum United States, 1812 to 1861, I have the pleasure of introducing 14 distinguished scholars who are experts in this field of American history, all from some of the most prestigious universities in the world. In this episode, I'd like to introduce a scholar who is a leader in the field of US immigration and the winner of no less than 16 literary awards, the Honorable Professor Adeline Toyofuku of Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Among her notable publications are the Pulitzer Prize-winning European Social Order and its Impact on Immigration in the United States, and Ellis Island and its Effects on American Industrialization. I will now leave you in her capable hands to discuss life as a new immigrant in the North in antebellum United States.
Everybody to episode 5 in our series of documentaries about antebellum United States, 1812 to 1861. In the previous presentations, we discussed life as a northern factory owner, life as a northern factory worker, life in the rural north, and life as a woman and child in the north. I am Professor Adeline Toyofuku, a scholar of American history from Harvard University, and I am now going to discuss what life was like as a new immigrant in the North during the mid-1850s. During the antebellum period of United States history, from 1812 to 1861, more than 5 million immigrants came to the United States. In the decade after 1845, this was the highest immigration entrance period at 1.5 million people. This was because they wanted to leave behind poverty, find employment, and have educational opportunities. They also wanted to reduce the possibility of persecution, disease, and being abused by the dominant European kings and queens. The main reason for Irish and German immigrants was because of a blight of crops that included all potatoes and edible roots. These foods were the main staples in their daily life, and losing all of these would cause lots of problems. The loss of crops is called the Great Famine or the Irish Potato Famine. From the years 1847 to 1854, more than 1.25 million citizens immigrated to the United States. Therefore, this resulted in a major decrease of labor workers in Ireland and other European countries. From 1840 to 1850, immigrants were unskilled laborers who ended up living in poor inner-city conditions. These immigrants were welcomed back because of the great need for manual labor in factories and construction. Many sought to work in factories. The working conditions were dangerous, the hours were long, and the pay was low. They were only just able to survive. The 1800s were known for the large number of immigrants that came from Great Britain, Norway, Ireland, Prussia, and the German states. Also at that time, steamships made immigration easier for Europeans to travel to the United States. Italian, Hungarian, Polish, and Greek citizens occasionally traveled on the steamships more than once for job opportunities and a better standard of living. Immigrants were mainly from Europe and came because of crop failures and poverty. When entering the U.S., immigrants need to follow all immigration laws. Some of these laws were based on their ancestors already having immigrated to America. A person needed to have a certain requirements so they could enter. They had to be free from diseases and not have any criminal records. When an immigrant arrived in the U.S., they needed to obtain a custom manifest or custom passenger list in order to get through immigration at the port. These papers listed everything about a person's history, age, marital status, and profession. Later than 1855, there eventually were designated places where immigrants could be processed. Steamships reached the ports in larger cities and dropped people off at Castle Garden in New York City, the whole state of Pennsylvania, and the city of Baltimore. Castle Garden officially opened in July of 1855 and was a port for entrance, as well as a place where immigrants could be screened for any contagious diseases. Diseases of the time included smallpox, typhus, yellow fever, and scarlet fever. Baltimore was a port for immigration throughout the 19th century. This was a popular place when Baltimore partnered with the Lloyd Steamship Line, where they built ships to transport immigrants to Europe from the U.S. In the 19th century, Pennsylvania was close to the Atlantic, making it easier to transport passengers, and was also used as a quarantine station to test to see if the immigrants carried any contagious diseases. This port entrance was south of the Delaware River in Lazaretto, Pennsylvania. In 1855, New York was the main entrance for immigrants to enter as it was in the north. This was ideal because in the south, there were rarely any job opportunities as the cotton fields were manned by all slaves. In the north, immigrants were able to get jobs at manufacturing companies and just earn about a living. When people immigrated to the United States, especially women, worked in factories as the wages were lower in Europe and higher in the U.S. The money that the workers received were only spent on certain necessities and at certain stores that the owner would allow. This left the immigrants' purchase very restricted, and if workers did not follow any of the guidelines, the owners considered firing them. Even if the workers did lose their jobs, they wanted to protect them to prevent their families from living under poor conditions. Housing for immigrants was really rough, especially when they were new. These places were crammed, often filled with lots of people, and did not always have the basic necessities such as toiletries, running water, and ventilation. Because it was so crammed, bacteria and diseases spread very easily. This housing was not permanent unless the immigrants paid a certain amount of money. Men emigrating to the United States from Ireland usually migrated without their families. If they decided to stay and earned enough money, they could help their families back home in Ireland. Chain migration was when you were able to send part of your work salary to your family, which was then used to either support them or to buy tickets to transport them to the U.S. The Irish famine led to the immigrants staying in the United States. On the other hand, most German immigrants came with their families. This led to them being able to continue the traditions that they did in Germany, despite the fact that they were in a different land. Some of the traditions included trading and their style of cooking. When Germans settled, they ended up in St. Louis, Missouri, Cincinnati, Ohio, and Milwaukee, Wisconsin. This formed a triangle that was later called the German Triangle. German immigrants were either Catholic or Jewish. At the time, New York had a large growth of Jewish population. In 1825, there were approximately 500, and by 1860, there were 40,000. Although this was a huge increase in New York, this was seen across several other American cities. Jewish immigrants came not only from Germany, but parts of Poland as well. When Jewish immigrants settled, it was rarely in the rural areas, but more in the locations where it was easier to find a job. These locations usually had retail stores such as artisanal occupations that included tailoring. The Irish and Eastern European immigrants brought the Catholic religion. In the antebellum period of American history, 1812 to 1861, more than 5 million immigrants settled in the United States. The majority of the immigrants were Irish and German, which left a legacy in their cultures and religions throughout the United States. Although workers needed to supply the newly created factories, this put a strain on available resources such as housing, transportation, and food. Many of these immigrants helped the United States become the leading manufacturer in the goods of the world today.